Hi, welcome to Modern Papist. My name's Ryan,
And I'm Sean.
and we're going to be talking about Catholicism in American history, the St. Patrick's Battalion. Sean, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. What's it? Everything's doing pretty good. The weather's getting warmer, and things are just staying interesting. And the classic 2020.
Yeah, it's been pretty hot. I was outside for like 10 minutes, got sunburned in my face.
Yep. No, I work outside, so I have an A+ farmer's tan already. I'm quite proud of that.
Okay. Okay. Uh, so the St. Patrick's Battalion, where do you want to start? You want to start with the demographics?
Yes, the demographics. So I guess we should actually say what they were first. The
Okay.
St. Patrick's Battalion was a battalion that served in the Mexican War, in the Mexican-American War. And that's a very non-Mexican name. I'm sure they refer to it as, the battalion San Patricio, or however you'd say that. My Spanish is not very good, so I apologize. But the demographics were of Irish people, primarily. So,
And a lot of them were former American soldiers.
yes. So they would be almost exclusively, actually, former Americans, expatriates who were Catholic, who at one point were part of the American side of the American Mexican War, but kind of defected to the Mexican side.
Okay. Okay. So, what's I'm Mexican American War isn't exactly the most known war in our American history.
No,
Do
it
you
is not.
mind fleshing out some of the I guess the causes and reasons for the war?
Hmm. Absolutely. So yeah, a lot of the reasons for the war. I feel like at least we learned the causes in high school history, but kind of a refresher. At the time, I believe 1909 was kind of the year that Mexico was really trying to establish what form of government they would be having. Spain, had been kicked out, and there'd been like a long series of political attempts to form one collective government because they did not have a national identity at this point. Mexico was more of a collection of small towns than a nation,
Gotcha.
and so
Do
they're
you
trying
mean
to establish a national identity at this point.
just to clarify? You meant 1809, not 1909, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
catch.
I heard that and I was like, wait a minute.
Hold up. Good catch. Good
Yeah.
catch. Yes. And so, they're trying to establish this. And one thing they need to establish is what their borders are.
Mhm.
They did not have a map, really, like one map that everyone shared, or where Mexico began and where the United States began. And so this needed to be worked out.
Mhm.
And on the American side, hopefully you learn this in American history, is that there's a philosophy called manifest destiny. The idea that Americans have the duty and obligation even to take as much land really as possible to go all the way to the Pacific Ocean and to spread, our form of government and way of life, which is a good one. You could definitely do much worse than subscribing to American philosophies. Absolutely. So, and um, yeah, a lot of people saw this coming. So the war started in 1846. And even I got a reference to one government official from Mexico in the year 1812. He said, the USA will try to take us, essentially. He understood what manifest destiny was, and he predicted this long ago. His name was, and once again, my Spanish is very poor, so I'm sorry, Luis de Oins, Onis, Onis, Luis de
Onis.
Onis,
Onis.
Onis.
I'm thinking it's Onis. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So once
We're
again,
sorry. We're sorry for
I
the
only speak
language.
English, yeah.
Like,
But so Luis here did properly, effectively predict the Mexican American War. And so it was something they knew it was probably going to happen at some time.
all
So
right. So we have, Mexicans are going west, or I'm sorry, not Mexicans, Americans are going westward. Was there some sort of talk between the countries though as it was happening? Like, was there some sort of agreement that came that maybe
Yes.
because someone mentioned this that was official, they knew it was going to happen, so they kind of wanted to blunt the blow or something?
Yeah, so one thing that Mexico tried, and I think it was a good idea, but it just didn't end up working out for them, was they were allowing American homesteaders. Homesteading is the concept that if you go claim a piece of land and you just live on it for a certain amount of time, the government will just let you keep it. And so Mexico offered this to Americans, large swaths of land that you can call your own if you just live there for however long. They did have conditions, of course, and one, and this is not from our cited sources today. This is from my history professor. I thought it was very interesting that he mentioned this specifically. That one of the conditions was that you would become Catholic, because these were Protestant Americans coming in, and the Mexican government said, you do have to adjust to our culture. We are a Catholic culture, and if you do, you ought to and must promise to become Catholic. And so many of them did. The problem with that is no one really meant it or fell through with it.
Oh, so they
Um,
promised to do that, but they didn't.
but they
Okay,
did
so
not.
because you said many of them did, so they went and promised to do that, but then they
But they never
reneged
ended
on
up
it.
becoming Catholic. No.
Gotcha.
So, and that's a discussion. A lot of people might blame people for breaking promises. A lot of people would try to blame the Mexican government for trying to impose a religion, but that's just the situation that they found themselves in. And so that's why Texas became its own republic for 10 years, is because it was this own separate group of people who were not quite in America, but, refused to be part of Mexican culture.
Huh. That's very interesting. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I guess from the standpoint of Mexico, if they're making the conditions,
Yeah.
I mean that seems legitimate
Yeah.
because it's their land. But
Yeah, if you don't like the conditions, in theory, you don't have to take the land, but they
exactly, and
did.
that comes back to free. I mean, we talk about that today in several different spheres of political spectrums.
Absolutely.
Not to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the Mexican American War, Western migration from America, and then conflict with Mexico coming as an identity with itself in its totality. Okay, so I guess is there any other backdrops you think that we should go into that would be influential to the St. Patrick's Battalion, or is that like where we would like they're traitors?
No, so I would like to talk about the kind of the man who sparked the movement, if you will.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah, so his name is John Riley. He was born in County Galway in a very small town called Clifton, County Galway. That's actually one of my dad's favorite spots in all of Ireland. My family's very Irish. I lived there for a good bit, and so that was his favorite. And I've been to the Clifton Galway area. Very beautiful. I love it a lot. But that part of Ireland is also known for the inferior farmland, and this all takes place at the same time as the Irish potato famine. So
Okay.
the famine starts in 1845. The American Mexican War starts in 1846. So one right after the other. For anyone who's not familiar with what the famine is, essentially what was going on was England was occupying Ireland. I believe that the official date they give, or the English is like officially give for ruling Ireland, is 1801. However, that's definitely not the beginning. It's definitely not the end of English occupation in Ireland, unfortunately. But essentially, a lot of the farming land was taken, and a lot of the food was being taken. And the Irish were living primarily off the potato crop. And one year, due to significantly damp, even more damp weather than usual in Ireland, if that's possible, a fungus started growing on the potato crop, and no potatoes. All the other food was being taken essentially, and so I believe it was about a quarter of the population was dying in between 1845 and 1852.
Do you know the
1847 being the absolute worst year of it.
what? Do you know how many people were before Ireland had that famine? How many people there were?
Yes, so the population right before the potato famine on the whole island was approximately 8 million.
Okay.
About a quarter of them died. And fun fact, Ireland has actually yet to regain that population.
Whoa.
They're resting at about 6 million right now.
Okay.
So they have actually, that's so devastating, they have yet to recover. And that's not talking even, that's just the people who died of disease. Many people tried to steal food from the English and were set up on what were called coffin ships. And the death rate for being sent on a coffin ship, and this is the stereotype, we're sending you to the London Tower. I believe at this point they were sending people to Australia.
That would make sense.
Yeah, and that's why there is a good Irish population in Australia. A lot of people use that history of Australia as a joke. I'm actually just being totally serious about it. And the death rate, if you got on a coffin ship, was 50%. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. So if you even got on a boat, there was a 50-50 chance you would die and another 50% chance you would just never see home again.
Wow.
Yeah. So really rough. And because of that, a lot of people, if they had the opportunity, just left Ireland.
Okay. So just because I don't want to start talking about other countries.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I bring it back to America.
Yeah.
So St. Patrick's Battalion, so were they mostly Irish immigrants?
Yeah. So it was started by John Riley here. It's actually funny. So his birth name in Ireland, he was from a very Irish-speaking part of Ireland.
Yeah.
So his full name would have been Sean Padraig O'Reilly. Riley being spelled O-RAGHAILLIGH. That's how you spell Riley in Irish. And so I found out he actually has the same name as me. My name is Sean Patrick. So the English version of the middle name, the Irish version of the first name. So when he came to America, he settled in Michigan, actually. We're both from the Archdiocese of Detroit. Wow. He actually originally settled in Michigan before being recruited to the Army. So Sean
That's awesome.
changed his name to John. And so John Riley went down, and pretty much what was stated as the reason was this is the time of the, Know Nothing Party, of incredible hatred against immigrants of all stripes, a strong sense of nativism going on in this point of American history.
Yep.
And so immigrants were very much not treated well. And one thing that was suppressed was their foreign religion. And for many of them, for these Irish, Italians, Polish, Bavarian Germans, it was their Catholic faith. And so they were fighting Mexico, which is an incredibly Catholic country. And it was very weird fighting their fellow Catholics who would go to the same Mass. At the same time, they celebrated the Mass in the same language, right? At this time, Latin was still being used universally.
Yep.
So it was just the difference between Latin in a Mexican accent and Latin in an Irish accent, right?
Yep. That's a very good point, because we're not used to that right now.
Oh, absolutely not. You're used to going, at least from my experience being of Irish descent, if I went to a Mexican community, I would still understand what's going on in the Mass, but I don't speak Spanish.
Yep.
It wouldn't be the same. But they all experienced the Mass in the same way, or at least incredibly similarly. And so John Riley rallied a lot of these Irish, Italian, Polish, German, but I think most of them were Irish. And they broke off and they joined the Mexican army instead.
All right. So just because a lot of people will look at this and be like, all right, well, why are you doing a battalion of traitors? Why are you, because, it is American history. But it's also very much Catholic. And the reason why we went into such a tangent at the very beginning because it's not a tangent, it's contextually important, I think, is to understand the backdrop. And the backdrop is these men who just immigrated from a country that was being tyrannical to their people came to America, fought for their government, and now they were doing the exact same thing to a completely different country. And they were being the people on the ground doing it. And so that's a huge backdrop. You can't just say, well, they're traitors. It's like these people celebrate the mass, like the sacrifice of the mass. And they clearly took it seriously. And they're like, well, I'm not going to fight against someone who I have more in common with, who I'm more than a brother with because of the relationship with the sacrifice. And, then these people who are forcing me to go to Protestant services or, whatever, I would assume they're being forced to because it's not.
Yeah, at least the Catholic Mass was being suppressed at minimum.
Yeah. So, that's an important backdrop. So So they're not just traitors. They didn't grow up in America. They're fresh off the boat. They've been discriminated against on 2 different countries, and they went to a country that was going to welcome them and didn't say screw your religion. Yeah. So that's hugely important. So just because, I don't want to say be a traitor to America. That is not at all what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying these Irish people and other people from other countries had convictions more with their religion than with where they currently were residing.
Yeah, or even race, because they were fighting with other white people. Let's just use that term, and they knew their teaching. There's neither Gentile nor Jew, nor servant nor free, right? No woman nor man, but all one in the Lord. And they really took that to heart and saw the people of different skin color as their brothers.
Right. That's really and that's why we're focusing on them, because there's a virtue there.
Absolutely.
So going into it, what exactly did they do? As a battalion, how influential were they in the Mexican army against the American army? And what can you say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Irish people have a long history of fighting in wars that are not theirs, essentially. I recently went to the Irish Immigration Museum in Dublin, Ireland, and they have one room, and it's just dedicated to Irish who have fought in the English Army, in the French Army, in the Canadian Army, American Army, the Confederate States of American Army, the South African Army, and the Australian Army. And so I think people born in Ireland have quite possibly, and Argentina, that's the other one. So there is a good chance that people born in Ireland have participated in wars on every continent except Antarctica, essentially. And they have a reputation of doing that quite well, even though they never had a formal united army themselves. And so they were influential. They were good trained American soldiers. We had a very good army at the time, and we always proved to be a hassle for the American army to deal with, especially since we knew their tactics. They knew their tactics, and they knew what was up. No legends, no ballad, no historical document have ever claimed that they were less than effective in their battle strategies. If you look at the artwork drawn about it, they're always wearing bright green coats, which somehow I doubt actually happened. I feel like that's more of a dramatization or, for art's sake. Yeah. They did have their own flag, I know, to identify them, because that was kind of it. Here, I actually have a copy. This little flag is probably older than I am. My family's had it forever, so it's kind of beat up, but this is what it looks like. Now, we don't actually have historical record of these, but from descriptions, from first-hand accounts, this is kind of what it was described.
And so what's it say? I don't want to ruin how my understanding of the Irish. I don't know how to say the last word. So what's the phrase there?
So it's Erin go Bra.
Okay.
Translated, it can mean long live Ireland or just Ireland forever.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah,
it sounds really nice.
yeah,
Like, I mean,
it's a good flag. Let's say we keep it in our pencil case, and yeah.
okay. So okay. All right. So they were very effective. What were some of the climaxes with the battalion?
So they really only fought in five major battles, but they were major battles. The last and most well known being, once again, forgive my Spanish, Caravucio. That's kind of on the outskirts of Mexico City. This is around the end. Um, they fought valiantly, but ultimately lost due to numbers and strategies. The American army was, at the end of the day, just better.
Right.
Yeah. And so at this point, yeah, this is where we see kind of the band breaking up. Most of them were hung of the St. Patrick's Battalion. Actually, martial law at the time declared that deserters would be shot via firing squad, but that was not painful enough, I suppose. They intentionally used hanging because that was a little more painful, if you will. Sends a bigger message, unfortunately, and that was probably still common. That probably wasn't a one-time event. We have an account of one man being spared, actually. It's interesting. He was an old man who was in the American army that defected and joined another army. And the reason they surmise is actually because he defected. His son, who was also in the army, did not.
Oh.
And so a lot of people consider it it was a reward for the younger son, or yeah, for the son, that his father was not hung. So that's like the kind of lone survivor. There are actually debates on whether they actually killed John Riley enough. Fair
Oh.
enough. Like they actually debate. Um, I think the evidence from what I've seen shows that they did not kill him on the same day because he technically did not leave during wartime. I think he left like right before the war started.
Gotcha.
And so he technically didn't defect during war. Loopholes kind of thing. There
Right.
was a Catholic parish in Mexico City area, and they had, their list of parishioners, and there's one guy. He was just listed as Juan, which is Spanish for John or Sean in Irish. And so people surmise that perhaps that was him. They didn't give him the last name because Juan O'Reilly kind of sounds suspicious. They'd be like, wait a minute, was that one of the St. Patrick's Brigades guy? Like,
Right.
Absolutely. So that's kind of what happened. And for further after, like how they're remembered is as martyrs, honestly.
From Mexico, right?
From Mexico. Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely on the American side.
Yeah,
Um,
not the American side.
every St. Patrick's Day, they have a group of bagpipers go through the city. They honor them. And it's interesting. They picked St. Patrick's Day. I believe it was August 13th was the actual day that they were killed. But recognizing St. Patrick's Day is such an important, representation of the Irish culture. But it was, they picked their feast day. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah.
sure if the Mexicans desired to be, or those Mexicans specifically wanted to be remembered and commemorated on a day, it's very likely that they would request the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe or something.
Right.
And so they recognized, the Irish equivalent, if you will, and honored them religiously, like as such.
Now,
Yeah, and so they have a street, I believe it's called St. Patrick's Battalion. They have a school right there in Mexico City, and there's a bust of John Riley downtown, and he's well loved as a hero there.
well, that's kind of interesting. I think I the street that you had mentioned, I looked up just before doing this, just because obviously I wanted to be somewhat familiar with it. And so there was, I think it was called the Irish Martyrs.
Yes, I believe that's the name of the street.
That's the name, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know that the American government. So yeah, this is like kind of me looking up just the American government side. They didn't want anybody to know that St. Patrick's Battalion existed, and so they denied it until like the 20th century.
Which is
And
insane.
Yeah, which is absolutely insane. So I'm very, yeah, and there's evidence. I mean, there's evidence for that, and that's kind of disheartening. But I also understand from their standpoint, like they don't want to give away. Hey, there's a bunch of defectors, and they're calling themselves this very heroic name
Hmm.
for a saint. Don't join them, like
Oh,
like
absolutely, yeah.
so
Yeah, ideas.
denying their existence.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because there were actually Catholics in America who were not fans of them because they believed that it kind of tarnished the image of Catholics. The idea was they don't believe Catholics can be Americans, and the minute Catholics join the war, they defect. And it's kind of proving the Know Nothing Party, the group of immigrants, that we were right all along. Those Catholics will never be part of America. And so there are reports of Catholic chaplains in the U.S. side, even though they weren't treated the best, that really tried to work for Catholic image. And that's another reason why even Catholics would be discouraged from in America from knowing and telling that story.
Wow, that I mean, I understand it from the standpoint of the priests and yeah, the clergy being like, all right, well, we're not really, they don't represent all Catholics, but at the same time, like
In a
that's,
way, they should.
I mean, it depends because now what you're doing is you're going into just war theory, which has been
Yes.
around since Augustine,
Yes.
and now we have to argue, all right, was it just that the Americans came in and basically took land that wasn't theirs?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know I don't want to act like I'm straw manning it completely because that isn't completely the full story, but it's a lot of it. And
Both
so,
wanted that land.
yeah, they wanted that land, and the manifest destiny was a thing. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's just very interesting looking back at that and looking at Ireland today. And I'm Irish. I have a Claudia for a wedding ring. He's
Hey.
got a flag in the background, so we're very in tune with that. Well, I meant like the county. Was it the county flag?
Oh yeah. So I didn't even realize. So a little background. Just I'm not gonna spend too much time on me, but I was a missionary in Ireland for a year. I worked for the bishop of the diocese of Waterford and Lismore. I lived in the house of the bishop, Bishop Alphonsus Cullinan, one of the best bishops in the church, in my opinion. Absolutely amazing, incredibly holy man. Um, yes, if you're Irish, look him up, and if you're not, look him up. He's amazing. But yeah, so the flag. So this is not an official flag. Counties really don't have official flags. They have flags bearing their colors, which they have official colors. So Waterford's is interesting because their primary color is white, which some say is boring. I think it's kind of unique. So you have the three ships, which represent three battleships that defended Waterford City from people from New Ross, which is a different Irish city.
Right.
And then it says Port Larga, which is Waterford in the Irish language.
Oh, all right. Well, that's nice.
But yeah, so that's just showing off. Anyways, I gotta show one more Irish thing. Um,
Okay.
Here's my Irish passport. I've been a citizen of the nation of Ireland for a while now. It's just because my family is such recent immigrants that the, you know, immigration department just decided me and my brothers deserved it. So very grateful for that.
Yeah, and it's just very important. Well, yeah, I guess from a Catholic, just talking about Ireland just a little bit.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
really unfortunate what's happening over there, by and large, because the Catholic, or I'm sorry, not the Catholic. My grandfather was Irish. He actually wasn't Catholic, but the rest of my family was.
Mm,
But the identity that he espoused was very much Catholic-ish,
mm.
and right, reading reports about what's going on in Ireland just doesn't.
It's disheartening, yeah.
It is. I mean, especially with the amendment being revoked and basically the EU using it as a training or not training ground, but a kind of like an experiment.
A guinea pig.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And
I was
we live
actually,
in Michigan, so like we have like 9 million people
hmm
in Michigan, and the fact
yes.
that we have more than more than Ireland as a whole country, and they haven't like gotten back from the potato famine, like that's
Yeah,
yeah.
legalizing abortion will not help that.
No, not at all. I mean, if we've known anything, because I mean, abortion's been legal here for 40 years, and
hmm
that that has definitely stagnated our growth.
Absolutely. Well,
In,
Ireland, this is a nation that, as recently as the 60s, contraception was illegal. It
right.
wasn't rare, it was just illegal. And to see from that to, I was in Ireland the day that the abortion referendum passed, actually. Um, every county except for one voted yes to repeal. And I happened to be in the one county that voted no.
Well,
Shout out to
that's good. Yeah.
Donegal, the very the very northwest, so still part of the republic, but the very northwest. They're fighting the good fight over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, to
But
see that Catholic identity lost, and people would be surprised because most Irish actually do identify as Catholics.
yeah.
But the difference I see, and this is just me speculating, is there for the brigade identity um, gave action that with the title of Catholic that entitled responsibilities, not only showing up to mass, but realizing that you are part of this one holy Catholic and apostolic church. And even if you're a particular sinner, that you still are required to fight for it and for what it believes. Now, that the phrase now in Ireland is we have two types of atheists in Ireland, Catholic atheists and Protestant atheists. So even if you don't believe in God, you're still Catholic somehow. It's a racial thing.
Yeah.
And
So it's like cultural Catholic here.
yeah,
We're culturally
yes,
Catholic.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. And that's just really unfortunate. I mean, it's not just Ireland, but it is just looking back at it and hearing, watching people report on it and what's going on. It's just
mhm.
really not disheartening so much, but just disappointing. So
And we only bring this up because we're talking about such a great example of Irish bravery of faith,
right.
and
Yeah, exactly. Like it's the complete it seems like it's the complete opposite of what's going on now. Like it's
yeah,
espousing conviction. It's more espousing
mhm.
conformity to things that aren't you, or conformity to things that are worldly.
Absolutely,
So it's yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really weird to look at and then look at St. Patrick and then be like, all right, what happened? How'd the snakes come back?
yeah.
Like,
How did the snakes come back?
I mean, because
Yeah,
obviously, just clarifying, the snakes were not, because I mean, some people are going to get mad. They're going to be like, the snakes do not mean actual snakes. They mean like pagan thought, worldly thought. You're like, that's what that means. So,
yes. Irish myth is um, very image based.
right.
They won't tell you, describing how pagan thought left. It's, cast out. If you've ever heard the legends of Saint Brendan, where they celebrated mass on the back of a sea monster, um, you know, you're not going to tell me that they, per se meant that literally.
Right.
Yeah.
It might have been just like an incredibly rough ride, or
hmm
the storm, or I
Some
don't know.
people theorize a whale, but I still find that unlikely.
Well, yeah, that's the whale's gonna sit there for like 45 minutes, an hour and a half. Well,
No,
we're
man.
talking Latin mass, so we're talking like at least an hour and 15 minutes.
Irish priests are known for being able to celebrate the mass particularly fast, though.
Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, all
Anyways.
right, so yeah, we're kind of deviating, but so this was more of a like, well, I guess this also represents America to a certain extent because we're a melting pot of nations, and
Mhm.
contextually speaking, you have to give the backdrop of what's going on, or else you're going to miss motivations, and motivations matter. And so, we tried to be fair as best we can, as best we could in this, because, you know, we are Americans, we're patriots, we support America, but we also support our Catholic Church. We also support a whole bunch of things, and we like looking through history as objective as possible.
Absolutely.
So,
And I would say a reason why to do this, this is just coming to me now even, but it's important to realize that Catholics are by and large accepted as normal parts of society.
yeah.
But
Yeah, the
we
whole
have to realize,
sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're fine. We have to realize that, like, we had to fight for that. And it wasn't you personally. Like, I personally did not do anything. It was my great grandfather who, you know, had to walk through the street and look at Irish need not apply signs. You know, it's our ancestors, and maybe, you know, maybe you're a convert or your grandparents weren't Catholic, but these are still like your fathers in faith. You know, their faith still affects you, and they had to go through, you know, riots by the KKK and all this anti-Catholic, you know, immigration rhetoric, and to keep it up, I guess, if you will, because now it's not, you know, the idea of Protestantism versus Catholicism. It's the idea of modernism and scientism versus, you know, the modern Catholic. And that, you know, we're not in the same way and probably not as bad at this very moment, but we still have to fight so that people can see our faith as something good and as something both normal, yet preserving how extraordinary it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that was well said. Like, I mean, like, I know as a, well, I mean, not, I, yeah, whatever. I'll talk about my experience with other scientists about this, but some other time, because this is already going really long. But yeah, I think, yeah, I think this is really good. I like learning about it because a lot of the stuff you said I didn't know about. I mean, I certainly didn't know that there was, you know, before you even brought this up as an option, like, had no idea it was a thing.
That's not really talked about.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it's, you know, it is like one battalion, so I mean, I guess you could look at it that way. Yeah, I mean, I really like that you brought this up, and it was fun to talk about it, especially getting into like our roots. I guess, you know, this is it for today. You know, we want to say thank you for joining us. Again, we're learning this stuff too. You know, we are going to be leaving citations down below as we always do. It's not going to be absolutely comprehensive because we're not going to say, all right, this citation came from this place, this citation came from this. We're going to use what we used as general, mostly Sean used, but you know, what we used as general documents to support what we're saying. And we hope you enjoyed this because it's been fun. So
yeah, I'm having fun.
Okay.
Sweet. And I guess we're signing out. So thank you for joining us for episode 2. Join us for episode 3. We don't know what it is yet, but I'm sure it'll be great. So see you next time, guys.
Yeah, thank you.